Hey everyone, we are back on Path of Exile with quite possibly the last build of the league, and since we are on the last stretch of Harvest, this is gonna be a little bit shorter, especially since we are playing with Hollow Palm technique as a Chieftain yet again. And I'm using Ice Crush on this character, but any other slam skill should work. Things like Ground Slam or Tectonic Slam or maybe other stuff that you wanna play with. Just to be warned that if you're gonna play something different than Ice Crush, then you should change some things on the gear and the skill tree, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. With that said, remember to subscribe if you enjoy the video, otherwise a rating and a comment help greatly, spreading the content to the masses. As always, you can skip the commentary by following the timestamp on screen or down in the comments or in the description. So now let us talk about clapping really freaking hard as a Chieftain. Again. Alright everyone, so this is a level 95 Chieftain and it's the same Marauder that I kept using throughout the entire league, which is why he's level 95. And the last 4 points that I allocated were versatility near the Marauder start for some additional dexterity, intelligence, attack speed and accuracy, and also the mana leech near the ranger starting area, since we are gonna have to use this to sustain our mana during boss fights and sometimes during clear, so do that. Besides that, we are playing as a Chieftain because we want the Fire Leech, the covering enemies in Ash so that they take increased fire damage, Fire Penetration, the Fire Resistance so that we can use those suffixes on the gear for Dexterity or Chaos Res, and enemies near our totems take increased fire and physical damage, since we are using Ancestral Protector and Vaal Ancestral Warchief. Besides that, the skill tree is a little bit wacky because we have to push towards Avatar of Fire, since in conjunction with Call to Fire, we get to convert 100% of Ice Crush's damage to fire, and we only deal fire damage, which means things like Atziri's Promise are completely useless to us. Besides that, this area, the Templar starting area, has no dexterity, which means we're gonna have to push for more dexterity in our jewels and also in our gear, to make our character deal more damage. Besides that, we're also allocating a fluid motion here near the Marauder starting area so that we can convert a couple of nodes to dexterity, try to get one with a high roll and also fire penetration or elemental penetration as the implicit. We're also taking Unwavering Stance to be stun immune, and also escalation in the Warcry nodes, since we're using Enduring Cry thanks to Call to Arms, and we are making it instant thanks to that node precisely, so that we can, get endurance charges non-stop and some additional damage and heal thanks to escalation. We're also taking Fortify stuff because we are using Fortify on the gem setup. We are using a Lethal Pride again. We are gonna convert Iron Grip to Chain Breaker to generate Rage. Remember that this is mostly for single target, not so much for clearing. Again, the roll on the Lethal Pride matters. The leadership over the amount of warriors under Akoya, which means that roll is gonna give you additional bonuses near or inside the notables, inside the range of the Lethal Pride, so pay attention to that. Try to get stuff that actually helps you, things like, fist damage or maybe some fire resistance, stuff like that, so pay attention to that. We're also gonna be using a medium cluster jewel that has lead by example for Onslaught when we Warcry, and Haunting Shout to intimidate enemies when we Warcry, and Hollow Palm technique. And besides that, that's pretty much the skill tree. We're trying to get as much dexterity as humanly possible. We have to go towards the ranger starting area and also, Avatar of Fire to convert that rest of our non-fire to fire and only deal fire. So that's the skill tree, a little bit wacky but pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, let us move on to the gear. Okay, so for the gear that the character is using, remember that we are playing with Hollow Palm technique, which means no weapons, no gloves, no shield, and we have to get as much dexterity so that we can get as much physical attack damage, which is getting converted into cold and then into fire thanks to our skill tree and gem setup. And with that in mind, our first piece of gear is the body armor, which is a 6 white socket astral plate with life, increased dexterity, enemies you kill explode, 10% chance to gain a frenzy charge on hit, and I bench crafted increased attributes, because apparently you can have them alongside the increased dexterity. In your case, I recommend that you slam together 2 body armors, one with the enemies you kill explode and another one with the chance to gain a frenzy charge on hit, and work off whatever happens from that, especially if you can benchcraft the attributes, because getting something as close to my body armor, especially outside Harvest, is gonna be close to impossible, if not completely undoable, especially seeing as something like this is pretty expensive as a whole, so keep that in mind. The first ring is an amethyst ring with flammability on hit, life, a lot of dexterity, lightning res, and I bench crafted the elemental damage with attack skills. In your case, I recommend that you get something with the life or the resistance, the flammability or elemental weakness on hit, and some dexterity or attributes, and bench craft the rest of the stuff that you require. Because something like this, especially outside Harvest, is gonna be pretty difficult to acquire, and again, we do need some of the modifiers, especially the curse on hit on this, so keep that in mind. So the ring on the other hand has to be an onset ring, because we are kinda gem socket starved, and we still need some gems on our setup, especially our movement skill, which in this case is Flame Dash, and this is why you have to use an onset ring. And I recommend that it has as much dexterity, life, a resist, and if possible stuff like melee damage or elemental damage with attack skills, so that you can deal more damage in the end. And in your case, if you can get something like this that you can benchcraft the life, that should be more than enough. Otherwise, if you can get something better, that'd be great. But yeah. The amulet is a turquoise amulet with as much dexterity as possible, life, a resist, Physa's extra cold, and I allocated Panopticon, while also crafting elemental damage with attack skills in the bench. And in your case, I recommend going with something with as much life and dexterity, maybe a resist or 2, and the Physa's extra cold is only mandatory if you are playing with Ice Crash, because we are converting the cold to fire. If you were playing with Tectonic Slam, Ground Slam, or any other slam skill, then you probably do not need the Physa's extra cold and you can use something else. So besides that, a amulet like this with just as much dexterity, life, and maybe a resist should be the base to strive for. The helmet is a non-influenced helmet with the 10% of Ice Crash Fist damage gained as extra cold damage, which could have been higher because the overlap enchantment is 15%, but I went with the first one I found, and I crafted it using essences of dexterity. I do not recall which ones they are right now, I'll put that on screen right now, and it has life, chaos res, and I crafted more chaos resistance, since I didn't need any other resistance on the rest of my gear when I put on the helmet. And in your case, I recommend getting something like this, and something like this should be doable outside Harvest, because we're only spamming essences on a non-influenced helmet, especially since the enchantment isn't that expensive to begin with. The belt is a Stygian Vice with Elder Influence or Hunter Influence, and it has life, increased life, resistances, increased attributes, and elemental damage with attack skills that I bench crafted. Beyond Harvest, you probably just have to aim towards the increased attributes and maybe hoping for some life, because the increased maximum life is gonna be a little bit difficult to force. So yeah, just try to get as much increased attributes and the rest of the stuff through the use of alterations and regals and maybe an Exalt Slam or 2 if you're lucky, because something like this, again, is gonna be pretty difficult outside Harvest. And again, it can be either Elder or Hunter Influence, because both can roll the increased attributes, and that is pretty much the most important part of the belt. The jewel on the belt has life and dexterity, and that is pretty much mandatory, as much dexterity as possible. Anything else is a bonus and not mandatory at all. The boots have life, dexterity, movement speed, and some resistances, while also being two-toned boots. Beyond Harvest, I don't know how easy is it gonna be to get something like this, so I will just recommend working off the dexterity, movement speed, maybe a resistance, and you bench craft the rest of the stuff. Because again, without Harvest, something like this maybe not so easy to acquire. And for flasks, we use a Wise Oak, a Lion's Roar, and a Bottle Faith. If you do not have a Bottle of Fate, you can use Taste of Hate or a Sulfur Flask. However, if you use a Taste of Hate, you cannot use the Wise Oak because you are gonna overcap your cold resistance, which is gonna make the Wise Oak useless, and in that case you have to use a Sulfur Flask. But that's gonna be it for the gear, which means now we talk about the gem setups to finish off this build. And we've got Ice Crash linked to Awakened Elemental damage with attacks, Fortify, Multi-Strike, Call to Fire, and Combustion. You can also use Awakened Elemental Focus, but I prefer Combustion so that we can get additional fire penetration. And also because I had a level 21 Combustion lying around, though a level 20 and 20 quality is better than a level 21 without quality. On the helmet we've got Hatred, Herald of Purity, and Blood and Sand. Optimally Blood and Sand level 7 for more damage, and also Enduring Cry. On the ring we've got Flame Dash, as I said earlier, and on the boots we've got Berserk, Vaal Ancestral Warchief, Ancestral Protector, and Blood Rage. You could also use Vaal Haste instead of Blood Rage, but Vaal Haste is not gonna be up at all times, especially during boss fights, and Blood Rage kinda does the same thing, so yeah. So that's gonna be it for this character, that's gonna be it for build guides in Harvest. And this should be a little bit shorter, and just to finish off, this character pretty much can be doable with any other slam skill. I chose Ice Crash because that's what I had in hand, and I wanted to do a fire conversion Ice Crash. And in the end, it is a pretty powerful character, and it is a lot of fun to play with, and you're gonna see that from the Cirrus fight and other stuff that I may have. But that's gonna be it for me. And I wanna thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope to catch you on the later videos of this week, especially the League review that I'll be doing later down this week. So yeah, again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next video. Peace out.
You've finally caught my attention.
Is nothing. Glorious flames.
The others found strength.
I cannot
in their
do this yet.
projections. They became reliant on them. I am not so foolish. Die. Die. Be silent. Die.
Why run? What's the point? You are nothing. Creation itself.
Really interesting enough to warrant all this pain.
Is doomed.
Die.
This city is nothing. Why resist? Rain of stars.
The edge of death, my heart races. I am alive.
I is gone.
Meaning
Is. Everlasting fire!
feel the thrill of
The void! I cannot do this yet.